Welcome to Takeaways, Life Lessons Learned. My guest today is Bernhard, official title, Interim Vice President of Philanthropy and Alumni Engagement, and Interim President of the UNLV Foundation. Did I get those two right?
It's a mouthful, but yeah.
Are those separate jobs? Is that one job?
It's one job, really, but think of it as all things philanthropy and alumni engagement. That's what we oversee here in this building.
Very cool. So where are we? Where is this building? Where's your office?
We are in the one edifice in all of UNLV that feels like a home. It's the UNLV Foundation building. I think they should call it the UNLV Foundation House. They call a lot of university buildings houses across the country. And it feels like that kind of a place, like almost an East Coast sort of cozy building on the northern part of campus, which is a booming part of campus. And I'm here back in the heart of campus after a spell at about 4 years overseeing the Harry Reid Research and Technology Park development, which is a 120-acre parcel of land that is also bustling and with kind of a different spirit. So yeah, I've been all over and now back here on campus.
So it was interesting. We were talking earlier. I went to UNLV between 98 and 2003, and there was no reason to come to the north part of campus.
Right.
So the streets like Maryland Parkway and Cottage Grove. So we're just south of Flamingo here.
Yep.
Literally, there was no reason, no reason to be here for me back then.
There's been a lot of activity. We just broke ground on a brand new mega expansion of the preschool on this northern part. I also oversaw the International Gaming Institute on the corner of what used to be Flamingo and Swenson. Now it's Flamingo and University Center there on campus. And that's become a bustling beehive of activity as well. On any given day in the International Gaming Institute, you'll bump into somebody from Costa Rica there to learn about the global gaming industry, next to somebody from Greece, next to somebody from Thailand, which I just came back from. And it's all this, incredible global space on the UNLV campus. So yeah, the northern part of campus is blowing up.
Very cool. So we'll talk more about the Harry Reid Tech Park and the IGI, but you just mentioned as we're sitting here, literally last night, you landed back in Vegas from Thailand. What were you doing in Thailand?
So in Thailand was working with, among others, the Prime Minister's team, because Thailand is legalizing casinos, or at least there's a bill that's been put forth that would do that. And that's kind of what we did and do at the International Gaming Institute. There would be this goofy bat signal where some country around the world would be interested in sort of importing the Las Vegas idea. I like to say that Detroit sends shiny cars to the world. We send shiny buildings to the world. And Las Vegas-style buildings, often owned and operated by Las Vegas companies, and often these are Fortune 500 companies, have now been exported to 6 continents. And that's quite an accomplishment that I don't think that we conceive of or in our day-to-day think about as something that's equivalent to Detroit, again, sending its product out to the rest of the world. So Thailand's the latest. Was out there working with the government on what that might look like in a place that already has a really robust tourism industry. It's already a beloved tourism spot. And the question is, how can you create a catalyst for further development and for extending the stays of visitors there? And the answer, increasingly, if you want to extend stays, if you want to create a more robust tourism economy, you look to Las Vegas. Las Vegas has done it in a way that no other city has. In many ways, we're a global intellectual capital. Again, people don't think of Las Vegas as a particularly smart place, but we are in many ways coming up with the ideas that are then exported into economies all over the world in much the same way that other megacities have historically.
So one thing about you is you're a TED Talker. You have 2 TED Talks, and you're already teasing out from both, like how they sort of combine with each other. I'm going to talk to you about that. I'm very curious about that whole process. But I want to go back. You're a real local.
I'm a local, just like you, brother.
But you are a real 5th generation.
Yeah, my family goes
Nevada.
way back.
So we'll talk about your Vegas origin story, but education-wise, you're a double major as an undergrad at Harvard.
That's right.
I say that, I went to UNLV as the Harvard of the West, but
that's right.
You went to Harvard of the East for undergrad, double major in sociology and psychology. You were also captain of the baseball team and named an outstanding player on a nationally ranked soccer team.
All of those things were true, but maybe more impressively, before that was a Walter V. Long Leopard in East Las Vegas. I was also a Doris Hancock Hawk, a Frank F. Garside Gladiator, a Kermit R. Booker Bobcat, and a Bonanza Bengal. So that really, we were talking earlier before we started about important foundations of education. And I really felt like I got it here in the Clark County School District, which is another story that's not often told. The stories, and I suspect we both have them, right, of really proud and strong educational foundations and achieved here in Southern Nevada. And I think that our friends in real estate, for example, sometimes when they're trying to woo folks from other states to come here and build, for example, a headquarters, people will lament that there's a poor school system here. And that's not always true, right? And there are so many of us who have this really, really strong educational foundation. And certainly that set me up for success. I did not feel behind at all at Harvard University. I felt weird because I was from a massive public school in Las Vegas, which was not the norm there. But I didn't feel unprepared in the classroom. In fact, I felt very well prepared. And then came back here to UNLV for my doctorate and got an amazing education, as it sounds like you did, here at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, which has just become this powerhouse university in our hometown here.
Very cool. So are you still into sports at this point?
Yeah, a little bit too much, right? Like many of us, I'm way too distracted and looking for Wi-Fi on long plane flights to follow my Golden Knights, who, of course, lost while I was in Thailand and ended a season that we all had high hopes for. I have season tickets to all UNLV hoops and basketball. I was a season ticket holder to the Thunder in hockey before the Wranglers, before the Golden Knights, and have been a season ticket holder with each. I really think the Aces game product is probably the best product that is produced on game day of any show anywhere in sports. I would say that. I think we've got
also the first major that brought Las Vegas to championship,
first team,
which is overlooked.
First professional team sport, right? People don't necessarily, think that way, but they absolutely are. And the back-to-back championships. I think the Aces story is one of the happiest stories in Las Vegas sports, right? It's up there with things like the 1990 UNLV basketball championship, obviously the 2023 Golden Knights Stanley Cup. The Aces production and the Aces energy is an energy that's just palpable and so fun. So yeah, as you can probably tell, I like it a lot. I wake up at 4 a.m. to watch English Premier League soccer on the other side of the pond. It's a little bordering
You're a
on
fanatic
obsessive.
fan.
Yeah, the fanatic sense of the fanatic root is probably apt here. Yeah.
And as an athlete, do you still get to play as well?
Not so much. Post a couple of knee surgeries, I don't get to kick around as much or chase a ball around as much. But I guess that's not true in the sense that I now get to play with my daughters, Audrey and Ava. They're the most fun teammates I've ever had. So I finally, I've got a backyard where we got a neat little play area.
How do they feel about you as a teammate?
They probably wish I would pass more. Yeah. I'm probably a little too, I probably hold on to the ball a little too much when we're in our backyard kicking around. But it's a fun sports town in so many ways, right? And at a community level, I think once more, as people think about Las Vegas from outside, I had people asking me when I went to school, and they would always announce your hometown and in the sports I played, how did you do that growing up? Like, presumably inside of a casino. Did you? Where did you even play youth soccer or Little League? And it's like, it's
Caesar's Palace.
Yeah,
duh.
Exactly. Right outside on the the pool. But it's quite a robust community of sports figures too, as we both know, going way back with many famous athletes coming from this desert soil.
Yeah. So it's interesting about the way you talk about sports. It's from the lens of a researcher, which you are a researcher. You started your research career at Harvard. You've shared the story before, but maybe share it again, where came out on the field. Professor heard that you were, announced Bo from Las Vegas, and he asked you to write a certain paper.
Yeah, that's right. And God bless them, right? The teachers who care. Right. I had a teacher who cared and who showed up to one of my games in college and figured out that, they announced the starting lineups, and they announced that I was from Las Vegas, Nevada, starting in midfield, Bernhard. And I ran out there, and he came up after the game and he said, "Hey, that's really strange that you're from Las Vegas, because this was back when it was strange to be from Las Vegas." And he was a psychologist who was fascinated by gambling. And so I think he sort of had a little bit of a gambling fetish. And at the very least, he was curious about Las Vegas and said, you should write your paper about that. What was that like growing up there? And I have to say, all these years later, and that started in, 1992, 1993, I'm still trying to answer that question, right? What was that like? What do we know about the shadows of the bright lights of a community like this one? Because increasingly, this was really the first ever community like that, the first ever sort of truly post-industrial city that sort of rested its living, its community on the back of that kind of an industry. Now we're seeing more and more of that worldwide. I think we're only going to see more and more of that in the next, say, 50 years.
When you say that kind of industry, what do you mean?
So just an entertainment industry, right? As opposed to a manufacturing one. So yeah, most major cities in America, right? If you go through like the names of the cities in the National League, right? And especially the older cities, they were cities that were built probably near water. And then they would build factories, and then they would build things, and then they would ship them up the water someplace, right? That was the model for so many cities for so long. Not Las Vegas, right? Not built along a waterway. We were built along, of course, the Union Pacific Railroad, which helped. But we didn't manufacture things. We manufactured experience. And what happens to people who grow up in those kinds of communities, and in particular, what happens to people who grow up in communities where gambling is present. I got really, really lucky. I was given a research question at a moment when that research question took off. And I feel like I remember
it was back when you were an undergrad.
Yeah, when I was an undergrad. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, all these different states were legalizing, and I was showing up for those debates and testifying in front of different senates. And
what years were you there in Harvard?
So, I was at Harvard. I finished in 95.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah, and then chased a ball around for a couple of years in Europe, and then came back.
As an athlete.
As an athlete. Yeah.
Pro athlete.
As a pro athlete making very little money, but getting to see a whole world.
Chasing a ball, meaning soccer?
So I actually played both in Europe, which is crazy. Major League Baseball, I put some money into
like Michael
Europe.
Jordan.
Yeah.
Played basketball and baseball,
and
right?
baseball somewhat poorly. Although not that poorly. Actually, that's getting off on a tangent, but I think Michael Jordan actually reached a pretty good level of baseball. But yes, they had seen in Major League Baseball that the NBA and the NFL were wildly popular in Europe and wanted to achieve the same thing, and had thrown some money at a league out there that I participated in. So yeah, crazy ride. I feel like Forrest Gump sometimes. I just have these really cool things kind of fall into my lap. It really was not by design. People talk about, and ask me, what was your 5-year plan or your 10-year plan, or how did you get to where? And it really is getting really lucky and have really cool things falling into your lap. And then, of course, you got to be ready for it, right? I'm not trying to be totally I'm not trying to downplay things here, but I think you have to be ready for those moments and sort of hop on the wave. It's almost like a 6-year-old learning to boogie board, right? You hold on to the boogie board, right? When the wave comes, and then you're bouncing, and then you're holding on tight, and here I am.
It's a good way to put it. I think back to my life when I was just after college, and like, well, how did you get into real estate is a question I had.
Yeah.
You just sort of follow what's in front of you.
Yeah.
And then you kind of land and say, okay, this is my thing.
Yeah. Especially here in Vegas, right? It had to have been fascinating because the town you grew up in became an explosive real estate phenomenon.
It's like what's around you, influencing you, nature, nurture kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So graduated in 2003 from UNLV. I traveled for my fraternity for a year. I was a consultant, so I slept on.
That's cool.
It was a great experience.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of things out of that, like looking back, I, as a first generation, no one sat me down and said, you have to do these things called ACT and SAT. Right. So when I graduated, I had a GPA that actually wasn't high enough to get into UNLV. I didn't have ACT or SAT score. So actually, Shelley Berkeley kind of helped me. She was a regent at the time. Navigate.
Many people have that story, by the way. And then
Shelley Berkeley. I met her because I was in a youth group, right? So someone said, call this woman Shelley Berkeley. She'll answer your call. She knows you're calling.
Berkeley. Just call Shelley Berkeley.
I didn't know her.
Yeah,
my family didn't know her, but I was in a youth group, and the counselor put us together, and Shelley listened to me and said, go down to the registrar's office. Back then you had to go. They'll know you're coming, and just do what they tell you.
Wow.
And what they told me was, we can't admit you to UNLV, but you could take 2 classes as what's called a non-admitted student.
That's right.
So, and then go to community college, which is actually better for you for a couple of semesters because it's a little less money.
A little cheaper.
Great. So I did 3 classes at community, 2 classes here. And then after I think it was my second semester. I had the transcripts to transfer.
That's amazing. I mean, talk about like the Shelley Berkeley story in your case, the teacher story in mine. Be nice to people because you never know when even a small gesture of kindness might change a life forever. I'm sure she didn't spend days and days and days and days and days on your case, right? In the same way that my teacher wasn't like, he was going to a ball game and then made a suggestion, right? It doesn't take much sometimes. And yet sometimes you have no way of knowing where that's going to end. So be nice to people because you might end up being Shelley Berkeley.
Yep. 100%.
Changed your life.
I got into UNLV and then traveled and then came back and everyone was doing real estate
things were growing a bit.
So that was kind of back.
And then you hit a bit of a lull after. So you graduated, you had a fun time in real estate, and then you had a not fun time.
Yeah, I worked with my dad in the family business. I also got my license. I was like a part-time real estate guy, like most people back then in 2004. Right. You get your hair cut. Person cutting your hair is a real estate investor.
Always, yeah.
You go to Smith's. The guy bagging your groceries is giving you tips on how to flip house. That was the environment.
Help you buy a home.
That was the environment. Oh, he was flipping houses, this guy. I remember specifically. He was buying them and selling them.
That's great.
Anyway, that was the environment. So I did that family business for a little while with the license. Then I got focused on commercial real estate, and that's what I have been doing ever since.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
But this is about you.
This is not fun.
This is
exploring his two Las Vegas kids. Yeah.
So you were a pro baller, and then you came back.
Baller. That's who I was.
You came back to UNLV to get your master's and PhD.
Master's and PhD. I mean, this was the best place on the planet to study what I was studying. And quick funny story about that. I actually at one point got a summer internship / research sabbatical to spend the summer in the Widener Library at Harvard, presumably because it would have the best historical literature on gambling in America. And I came back after a few weeks because UNLV's library had way more materials and was way better for that. So it really cemented this notion that I was in the best place in the world. Once more, this was a time when, back then Las Vegas and Atlantic City were kind of it, right? Now we have 48 of the 50 states and a similar proportion of places worldwide that have imported the Las Vegas idea. And I know if this were a conversation you and I were having in Atlanta about the business community in Atlanta. Eventually you talk about Coca-Cola and how, did you know that Coca-Cola is in all these countries all over the world? We don't do that with Las Vegas. And yet we really are at both the big building level, but also the technology level in countries all over the world. The low-flung companies back behind the airport on 215 there, the IGTs, the Aristocrats, the Konamis, those are folks that often deal in 300 jurisdictions, right? These are global companies headquartered in Las Vegas. And yet we don't think about them like we think about, St. Louis and Budweiser, right? But that's who we are.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Even when you said earlier about exporting the building, not just technology behind it or the concept behind it, I didn't even think about it in that way.
There are buildings that look just like the ones on Las Vegas Boulevard in Boston, Massachusetts right now. There are ones in Sydney, Australia, in Cape Town, South Africa, and in Seoul, South Korea. Every corner of the universe now has a Las Vegas style building, typically run by Las Vegas people who invented this concept, who invented this product. And in many ways, that's an amazing intellectual accomplishment. When you look at the Strip, it's not like 42 million people come there because of its natural beauty, right? It's not like there's a beach there, right? Or a Grand Canyon that draws 42 million people. And so when you think about it, that means that everything that draws 42 million people there was invented in the head of a Las Vegan somewhere, right, at some time, and now exported to the rest of the planet. And so when we think about Las Vegas, we don't often think about it as an intellectual place, but I'm of a mind that it very much is.
So is this the stuff you're working on with your PhD, or what did you?
Yeah, Las Vegas and the impacts of casinos in Las Vegas was really the primary focus. And so this was the ultimate laboratory to then use the data from Las Vegas to look at what was going to happen if and when Missouri brought in casinos, if and when Louisiana brought in casinos. And then in a life-changing moment, I started to spend a lot of time in Singapore. Singapore was really the marquee place in Asia, along with Macau, but that started to import Las Vegas style mega resorts. And there was 1 year of my life where I think I flew to Singapore 10 times, and that's a 24-hour flight. Wow. Man, that's a long trip, right? But it was because that government visited Las Vegas, got the idea that they could bring that to Singapore and sort of spice up the scene a bit there, but also importantly, bringing in those 2 mega resorts. Las Vegas, both of those companies now operate on the Strip. One of them's Genting and one of them's Las Vegas Sands, although they just sold the Venetian Palazzo and now operate out of Las Vegas, but run a global empire. And those Las Vegas companies brought to the other side of the planet something that boosted their GDP by 1%, that increased their tourism by 11, 12%. These are the most lucrative inventions in the history of tourism, and they were invented in Las Vegas.
We need to get a little notepad and all these little stats that you're saying. The most lucrative inventions. You've said probably 6 or 7 of these things where we need like a rap sheet.
A rap sheet.
The Bo rap sheet. So now you're Dr. Bo.
So then I'm Dr. Bo, yeah.
And then you are named the inaugural research director at the UNLV International Gaming Institute.
That's right.
Inaugural.
Right. Yeah, so that meant there wasn't anybody in the building, really. And it was like, here's your canvas, right, on a campus. And I should say, too, when I got my doctorate, I had the opportunity to go do that at other universities. The University of Michigan system, because the casinos were going up in Detroit, had set up basically their version of an international gaming institute.
So you're like the only guy on the planet with a PhD in this material?
There were others who have, I don't mean to state that I was a sole lone wolf. There were some others at the time. Certainly my mentor was Bill Eatington at the University of Nevada, Reno. That led to a lifelong mentorship partnership that lasts to this day. I still have actually a chair at the University of Nevada, Reno. And so there were others who were clearly father figures, mother figures, and mentors. But my kind of unique configuration was looking at it from, again, I was a double major, psychology and sociology, and looking at it from kind of the molecular level of neuropsychology, right? What do we know about the chemistry of the brain that leads people to gamble? All the way up through the macroeconomic, right? What do we know about Asia's macroeconomics in the 90s and how that affected the desire to go travel all of a sudden with a large and growing middle class that was growing up in Asia. So macro, all the way down to tiny, tiny molecular micro levels. And so that educational path, which I never planned out, turned out to be pretty useful.
So useful. You spent 11 years
at the
Gaming Institute. And there were 2 people there when you started?
Yeah. It was me and 2 brilliant people, Pat Merle, Nakia Jackson-Hale. And, we just started building and eventually got up over 50 people. We had multiple centers of excellence. And
are you doing the hiring and is that your job in this?
Yeah. So I was at least on the hiring committee of every single one of those. Learning how to hire people?
Yeah.
Yes. And the greatest line I've ever heard about hiring people is that a job interview is a conversation between 2 liars.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Because the person who wants the job is
they're putting on
at least exaggerating,
face.
right? And so too, right? But out of that, you have to find a way to get at what's real on both sides of the conversation, right? And it is a science, man. You have to learn that. But what we found was we could attract elite level executives and people from the industry to come take huge pay cuts to come to UNLV with one simple promise. You can build something here. We'll let you build something. Right. And it's amazing how attractive that is to people, even people who are taking huge pay cuts. So we had people like Jan Jones Blackhurst, the former mayor of Las Vegas and Caesars executive, come work for us. Alan Feldman, who was the voice of the Mirage and then of MGM Resorts for so many years, one of the most visible executives in the history of Las Vegas, is now full-time at the International Gaming Institute. Andre Wilsonock was handpicked by Nelson Mandela in the new South Africa to help them as the chief regulator in the nation of South Africa as they built out a casino resort tourism industry. Left those roles to come open an international center for gaming regulation at UNLV, which he did because he was excited to build something for the world's government leaders in this field. We had Mark Yoseloff, who invented something like 3 of the 10 highest grossing table games of all time, come and teach courses and then open an entire center on gaming innovation. And
do you remember one of the games?
Oh gosh, yeah. We now have 27 patents And among other things, Casino Dominoes.
Who has 27?
So the UNLV, International Gaming Institute Center for Gaming Innovation, it might be the highest patent-producing laboratory in the entire Nevada system of higher education.
That's another one on the
So that's another center of excellence under the International Gaming Institute. And it started with a simple premise. Let's create a class where the final exam is invent a gambling game that the world's never seen before. Now, the sophistication of the math alone in that is enormous. The technology is often hugely complex. And what we realized is, oh, this is a STEM lab. This is a STEM lab. It's not thought of that way, but this is absolutely, in many ways, it was the craziest lab. We're about 100 yards away from it right here. It's the craziest lab you've ever seen in your life. In other ways, it's a conventional STEM lab. And all of a sudden, games like Casino Dominoes, we had an African-American kid from South Central walk into the class and say, in my community in South Central, we all play dominoes. That is the game of my community. How the heck have I never seen a game of dominoes on a casino floor? And we said, gosh, I don't know. But let's go after it. And that was then invented. Easy Jack is 1 card blackjack to 11. Instead of 2 cards to 21, 1 card to 11. Turns out these things are patentable, right? $1 Million Fantasy was a game where you sort of had a bet on every play on a National Football League game. And if something exceedingly rare happened, you could win $1 million in that moment, right? A crazy fumble and then shuffled pass with the quarterback's offhand that was completed for a more than 25-yard gain, right? And that was all sorts of fun games that it turns out young people are really good at inventing. And it turned people on to this whole side of the industry that I mentioned before, of these kind of low-flung headquarters back behind the airport and on the 215 freeway of technology companies that send their games all over the world.
And are the patents now a revenue stream for the
They're absolutely a revenue stream. This has been done at other universities. It's a rare thing, but when it happens, you kind of hit a jackpot and you're thrilled. Gatorade.
Pun intended.
So pun intended in this case, right? Gatorade was invented at the University of Florida. Gators, right? That's why it's called Florida. That's why it's called Gatorade. When the football team famously came to their chemistry lab and said, can you invent something better than water so that we don't wilt in the last part of the second half against, Alabama? And Gatorade's paid for like medical schools, right? And buildings and such, right? So these are the kinds of things that universities, Michael Crow, the president of ASU the other day said, he estimates that inside of an iPhone, there's something like, I think he said 5,000 patents that are all attributable to a lab in a university somewhere. So university labs are powerhouse places that are often at the foundation of our entire economy. And that's what we were looking to do at our university, right? Was to do something that was Las Vegas-ized, that was very much appropriate for our backyard, and that in fact helped our backyard grow as sort of an economic development function.
That's another term. So going back to when I was getting into real estate, there was this term Manhattanization of Las Vegas, which was
like going up.
Right. But that didn't really,
but
Vegasized is something, because it's true. When true. I'm blanking on the name, the golf place over by MGM, Topgolf.
Topgolf.
So when Topgolf, like talking to the architect that did Topgolf, they deliberately said, we have to make this appropriate sized for Vegas.
Yeah. We have to Las Vegas.
It's like a thing. Yeah. Is that an official term, or is that kind of like?
I certainly use it all the time. I don't know if it's an official term or not. But yeah, I think the Vegas Golden Knights Las Vegasized the NHL experience.
100%.
Right? You look at, I went to school in Boston, and Boston Bruins games, it would really get crazy. You knew if the organ player started to step it up like a half octave, right? That was about the extent of it, right? Now we've got, laser shooting dragons fighting with knights on the ice in a way that I would argue the entire industry has benefited. I've heard that from NHL owners saying the Las Vegasization of this league has been an exceedingly positive one for the industry itself, especially on game day, right? And that game day experience that the Vegas Golden Knights created has since been mimicked, right? It was often mocked, I think, at the very beginning, but that's what happens with innovation. First you get made fun of, and then you get openly copied.
I heard this. I haven't verified it. I'm curious if you maybe have that. When the Golden Knights were starting out, they hired producers from
WWE.
Professional. It is.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, and the idea was these are people who are brilliant at us versus them, at good versus evil.
So WWE, the professional wrestling,
the wrestling
league,
folks.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you recall, early on, it was heavily that. They would have a character representing the other team out there on the ice. They would have a whole battle. and it felt like WWE, which to many conventional types felt like, gosh, what on earth are they doing, right? This is just craziness. And now, of course, this is something that's almost, like I said, openly embraced. And as I said earlier, I think the Aces have done the pinnacle. There's something about the way that they also incorporate their players into the entertainment. You get really close with the players just by watching the Jumbotron and seeing them interact, because they've got loads of personality and charisma. And again, it's something that feels very Las Vegas in the end, I think, to most of us.
Have you talked to their executives at the Aces?
Oh, sure. Nikki Fargas is a genius. She's the president, of course. Jennifer Azee. Again, these are folks who would fit in any boardroom in America. We're just lucky that they're in ours here in Las Vegas.
No kidding. All right. So the IGI, from there, you got into economic development yourself.
I did. Yeah. It was sort of a case of, looking at whatever the part of the economy gaming was, and then expanding it out into the whole economy of Las Vegas, and in particular, looking at tech. And when I went out there, I'll take a step back. When I went to the Gaming Institute, it was an empty building, and a lot of people said, this isn't going to work because this is an industry run by high school dropouts who got great jobs. Well, you and I probably grew up with some of these guys, right? Dropped out of high school or just got their high school degree and got an awesome job at the valet. And of course, understandably, kept that job, worked their way up, and now we're general managers. And not only were some of those folks, the thinking went, not huge fans of going to college for 4 years. Sometimes they were openly resentful of the notion that you had to go there, right, to do something and achieve something in the industry. So you probably remember that mindset, right?
I remember a professor telling us when I was a student here that the university competes with the Strip in the sense that you can leave high school, or even if you're in college, get a job on the Strip. You're making very good money. You don't have to come back to school.
That's right. And the thinking when you and I went to school, especially, was, why would a community like that with mindsets like that ever embrace a university-led international gaming institute? And I felt like though the world was changing, right, and we were seeing an increasingly complex, increasingly global industry. And I got nothing against my great-great-grandfather. His last day of school was the third grade, and he was a casino dealer his whole life, right? There's nothing wrong with that life, certainly. Those are people on whose broken backs this entire city rests and was built. We owe them our gratitude. We almost owe them our worship level gratitude, right, for building this city on their broken backs.
I was going to ask about your grandfather since you brought him up. Did he sit for the oral history at the UNLV?
No, he didn't, unfortunately. You know what he always said was, there's stuff I can't say. And we always would say, well, they'll hold it, right, at the oral history program at UNLV for 50 years after you die if you want. But he wasn't interested, right? But once more, as the industry was growing global and getting more complex, it required a pretty sophisticated level of executive, and typically that was associated with higher education, right? So we really became, at the Gaming Institute, the go-to place anytime, for example, the NFL needed university-level expertise. And we had a fairly famous now story of the NFL coming to us and the Raiders coming to us back when they were the Oakland Raiders, and needing a university research-based perspective on what it would mean if, and this was a crazy if, an NFL team relocated to Las Vegas, right? And so building something of that level was really almost frowned upon by a lot of long-timers, except that the world was changing. And the same thing was true in economic development. The idea of building what became a tech park outside of the world of slot machines was really kind of laughed at. And the idea, you remember this, in 2020 when I started out there, this is the heart of COVID and into the teeth of the COVID headwinds. And commercial real estate was dead and maybe never coming back because people learned they could work from home, right? We had 120 acres of virtual nothingness at the time. It was a very empty piece of real estate that since has been filled with folks like tech unicorns, Sightline, tech unicorns like GeoComply, AI startups like Axes, the Oakview Group, which is the stadium technology and developer group, all kinds of different really sophisticated Fortune 500s like T-Mobile, like Intel, like LG, companies that didn't really have a huge Las Vegas presence, at least at a corporate level, all of a sudden saw the value in building at the Harry Reid Tech Park and now proudly occupy it in what has become really a beehive of tech activity.
So let's double click on the Harry Reid Tech Park. So 2020, you said, or 21, you became vice president in charge of UNLV's economic development functions at the Harry Reid Tech Park. What is that? Where is that? What's the point? And then how is Blackfire associated with it?
Yeah. So Blackfire is the innovation engine inside the tech park. Blackfire is the name of the state's gemstone, which I didn't know.
I'm learning.
The Blackfire opal.
Did not know that.
Is Nevada's official gemstone. It's also a really cool name. And so the Blackfire innovation is really the engine of innovation within that. And Las Vegas didn't really have those kinds of spaces, at least ones that were university affiliated. But if you look around the country, many communities do have that, right? Austin is Austin because of the University of Texas. That's why it's Austin, right? Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley in large part because of Stanford and Berkeley, right? You look at the Boston scene on the tech front, right? And maybe the best illustration is Research Triangle Park, which turned in an unlikely upset the Carolinas, which were a crappy tobacco, almost backwards economy, into the Carolinas, which are now a fintech hub among many, many other things, right? University-driven tech parks have been places that have transformed entire communities. So that sounded pretty ambitious, and I started in August of 2020 there, and it was empty, and it was COVID. And folks, of course, were really worried that this was going to be a disaster. And then, of course, gradually the pitch that was, look, if you move in here, you'll get 36,000 brilliant brains over on Maryland Parkway working alongside you. What do you need? You need graphic artists? We got those over in fine arts. You need engineers? We got loads of those. In fact, we're doubling the number of engineers. Oh, you need business types? You need an accountant? We got those, right? You name it, we've got it. UNLV and universities in general are systemic. They're the one thing in a community that touches everything in that community. I serve on a lot of nonprofit boards, and I love them. Nonprofits in general are Band-Aids for a single issue, right? Mm-hmm. And again, I serve on the Lou Ruvo clinic board very proudly. That's a Band-Aid for brain health, right? Mm-hmm. Which is desperately needed. Universities are not just about brain health. They're about all the kinds of health and all the kinds of art and all the kinds of business and all the kinds of social sciences, right? There's nothing in a community that a university doesn't touch. And the opportunity to build a place in the Harry Reid Tech Park that was both private sector and university driven was just a unique opportunity, maybe in the history of Las Vegas. So I jumped at it.
You've had a lot of those unique opportunities in the history of law. How long were you there?
4 years, and then was pulled back onto campus just a few months ago into the building we're sitting in now.
In your current role that you talked about earlier.
My current role that we talked about earlier, yeah.
Awesome. What a journey so far.
What a journey for a kid who used to chuck rocks and chase lizards and grasshopper. I feel like we had like grasshopper infestations a lot when I was growing up. I don't see those anymore, but... lizards and horny toads and grasshoppers I was chasing in the deserts of Las Vegas that are now covered with pavement and buildings and real estate.
So you're an accomplished public speaker. You're an award-winning. Your work is award-winning. You've got all sorts of accolades. You've got about 3 paragraphs of accolades. You want me to read them all to you?
No, please.
Why?
No.
I wanted to read them all to you and then ask you, how do you feel hearing me read all this stuff back to you?
Oh, gosh.
Anyone I think
the coolest one's the most recent one. The Clark County School District named me its Alumnus of the Year in its first ever Golden Apple Gala. And for a kid from the Clark County School District, there can be no better honor. That's the greatest thing I will ever win.
Is it going to be called now the Bernhard Alumnus of the Year?
No, because there are way better people. Like, I feel like, all of the Imagine Dragons were CCSD kids, and yet they picked me, right? And all these professional athletes and superstars. But it was a cool honor. Alex Bybee was my co-honoree. Has become a good friend. He also was a Bonanza Bengal. But like I said, that's a really, really cool one. That one I invited my whole family to. All of us are Clark County School District grads. I actually have 20 different UNLV diplomas in my family, just spread out over 5 generations, and cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents. And so, that was a real celebration of the power of public education in this community, which I think needs to be celebrated more.
So I'll spare you the reading of the 2-3 paragraphs here. We'll accept those other accolades that you're proud about. And let me say, officially welcome to the Takeaways podcast, Bo.
Thank you.
We got through your bio. How's that?
Awesome.
You mentioned your 2 daughters. Tell me more about them.
So Audrey and Ava are 12 and 15. This was the first year of junior high and first year of high school. Both of them are avid athletes, chasing a ball around. Because their daddy has had this chance to go travel the world, and I didn't get my passport until I got it to go chase a ball around, basically, when I was a grown-up. I've been able to bring them along for the ride in several occasions. So they've been to Singapore, they've been to Australia, they've been to Europe, really piggybacking often on their daddy's incredibly lucky career.
Is there any other hobbies or things you're passionate about that you like to geek out on?
I am a big, as we said earlier, sports geek, but in particular an Arsenal football fan. I try to make it back there whenever I speak somewhere in Europe. I try to fly back through London and try to catch an Arsenal match because I've not missed a match of theirs on TV in 20 years, and I've been lucky enough to see several in person. So it's a weird thing to be based in Las Vegas. And
why? I was going to ask why Arsenal.
Yeah, so I picked them when I was a baby. Well, not a baby, when I was definitely, like probably 7 or 8, just because back then we didn't have any exposure to it. But when you looked at the standings, the teams are weirdly named in that league. So, what's an Aston Villa? What's West Ham, right? Yeah, in the United States, we have teams like the Tigers, right? And it just was strange. But Arsenal sounded like a cool to a 7-year-old, wannabe testosterone-charged boy. Pushing probably dump trucks in the backyard and trying to project a version of 7-year-old boy manliness, right? And Arsenal sounded cool and tough. And that was the only reason I chose them, and I've been hooked ever since.
Do you think when we get the NBA team, they should call themselves the Blackfires or maybe the Opals?
Ooh.
Because that sounds pretty awesome, too.
The Las Vegas Blackfire.
That could be that. It could be the Las Vegas Opal. I don't know if that's as strong.
Opal. Yeah, it doesn't sound as strong. Yeah, that's the first time I've thought of that, but genius.
We can make this happen. You and I
know some
right
folks
here.
who have intellectual property trademarking skills over at Blackfire.
Should we just go ahead and do that now?
Before you publish this, before people hear this.
I like how you're thinking.
You and I need to trademark this. You and I, listen to me. I just stole your idea, by the way. No, this was your idea.
It would not have been my idea had you not said that this is the stone.
Ideas often happen.
And immediately I thought about, this is a cool name for a team, and the NBA is coming, right?
The NBA is totally coming. And by the way, that's the way ideas really blossom, right? It is, we think that it's, Sir Isaac Newton getting hit on the head with an apple all by himself under a tree and going, hey, gravity, right? No. It's a team effort. Always. Every lab, every great thinker was a person with a team, right? And that's something we've built out at Blackfire, is a whole team of folks, like my buddy Zach Miles, who's a great IP genius, like Jamie Schwartz, who's a brilliant business plan genius. At every step along the way, Robert Rippey was head of innovation. He was another strip guy we stole from the Venetian at the time, came over to us and led Blackfire, bringing his innovative mind and thinking about reinventing the hotel room and things like that, and bringing it out to Sunset and Durango is where the Blackfire Innovation Hub is within the Hayim Tech Park. And yeah, having a team like that, it's really fun for me because I'm somebody who's been on teams my whole life. So for me, it's been a fun thing to help put together teams and then help those teams win.
Have you seen Wedding Crashers?
I have.
So the meme in my head that comes up about ideas is when he says, I'm an idea guy, thrive on enthusiasm.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And it's true, right? It comes from a part of the brain that has to be lit up. And when another part of your brain, the amygdala, the fear part of your brain, is lit up, you don't have ideas. Right? You just have fear. You just have, I'm going to run from this, right? Or I'm going to fight. And both of those outcomes aren't, I'm going to build, right? And so we focused a lot, again, back to this whole psychology, neuroscience, all the way up to the global. We've thought a lot about getting people into the right brain place at Blackfire and thinking about when ideas happen and when they grow and when they blossom. And we have a beautiful view of the strip at Blackfire. We're up on the 4th floor with a panorama of the entire Las Vegas Boulevard scene. And you look out there, and once more, all of those things were invented at some point by somebody working in Las Vegas. And that's an amazing thing to think about. This is a city of ideas.
I just took a note to make sure I want to hear more about Hayim Tech Park in a bit, but this show is called Takeaways, and I started out with talking to people who I've had takeaways from and who have influenced me, and I asked everyone, and I ask everyone this question: what's been the single most influential thing or event in your life that's defined or shaped you the most?
So that one's pretty easy for me. When I graduated from college, I really wasn't sure what I was going to do as a grown-up. Didn't even know what that looked like. And I got a chance to go live in Europe, as I referenced earlier. Living in two countries where I didn't know the language, didn't know anybody, didn't know the culture, had really only had, I don't think at the time I'd even had Chinese food. I know that sounds crazy, but it's not like, again, I'm relatively old. I'm 52. We didn't have a ton of Chinese food growing up in Las Vegas. I'd certainly never had sushi, right, back then. And all of a sudden, having plates put in front of you where you had to eat the thing or else you weren't going to eat. And I was a finicky eater, man. And that's a metaphor for so much more in life, right? I was a finicky, narrow everything. And living in a totally different country, having to learn languages, having to learn how to interact with people, having to be comfortable not knowing where you, there were so many times I'd get in a car and they would have explained it to me, but I didn't understand where I was even going. I was about to be in a car for 2 minutes or 2 hours. I had no idea. And you had to just be like, okay, and hop in the car and go and not know the outcome. Man, that was good for me as a kid who had, again, I think like a lot of folks, just a much narrower experience. Everything good that has happened to me since, I can trace its DNA back to living in a different country for a little over 2 years and having to be okay with a whole wide range of things. Having to not only be okay, but to then maneuver and hopefully be nimble enough to thrive, right? And man, that's a metaphor or, an illustration of a skill that you need to develop, right? So I used to say in my last class to every student I've ever had, any students that are listening to this will remember this. I used to say, okay, we've been together for 18 weeks. You either trust me or you don't at this point. Either way, it's fine. If you trust me, here are my last words to you. If it were up to me, if I were, education czar, I would say, here's your diploma. Here's your passport. Go. Here's your diploma. Here's your passport. Go. And those words are the best advice I could have given anybody at the age of 22, because that's what I did. And it changed everything. It doesn't have to be at 22, but man, it helps you build muscles in your brain that you had no idea needed building. And in my case, it's just led to everything good that's happened since then. There's a part of that goodness that comes from living in Germany and living in Spain, which were two very different places, by the way. Those two cultures could not be more opposite, right? One's very, I won't say which. Guess we can play this game show stuff. One of them's very cold and one of them's very hot. One of them's very serious and one of them's very playful, right? One of them is very much on time and one of which is very much questioning the nature of time. One of which is very focused on the economy and the other is like, you're focusing on the wrong thing entirely. You need to focus on fun. One of which was all about Monday through Friday, one of which was all about the weekend, one of which was all about the beach, another was all about the forest, right? So it was really, really an interesting juxtaposition for a kid who just a few short years before was wandering the halls of a almost 4,000 student jam-packed Bonanza High School to suddenly be confronted by that. It was cool. Changed everything.
That is very cool. Let's leapfrog into now, what you're doing now. We talked about your title, your fancy title, your mouthful title. What do you do? What does your department do? What are some of your goals?
So among other things, we are alumni relations. And so those alumni are near and dear to my heart. I have 2 UNLV degrees. Every other person in my family, it feels like, has a UNLV degree. And those have also changed our family trees forever. And so keeping those folks who then go out and branch off in different directions in their own family trees, in large part because of their UNLV foundation, the beginnings that happened at UNLV, keeping those people connected to UNLV, that's now my job. So if there are UNLV alums out there, email me, man. Let's talk about your university and how far it's come. I mean, just since you and I went here, we were talking about this before we went on. We throw up new buildings seemingly every other year or so, or at least we have regularly over the past generation, in the same way that the Strip does, and in a way that's transformed this particular university. So come see our brand new engineering building. It is the future. Go see Blackfire Innovation out there. I keep saying Sahara Sunset in Durango. Go see our brand new hospitality hall, which looks like a 6-star hotel. These are all spaces that your university has put up and are now, creating all sorts of amazing achievements, including in 2018, we became one of the youngest universities in American history to reach the Carnegie top tier of universities. We moved from tier 2 to tier 1 with Dartmouth. Dartmouth's in the Ivy League. That's where your university is. So on the alumni front, it's about bringing you back to campus and connecting with the next generation for folks like you and I who went here long ago. On the foundation front, which is my other job, the UNLV Foundation is the fundraising mechanism, of course. And so all of the philanthropy that the university owes existence to, when you talk about a hospitality hall, when you walk in there, you see the pillars quite literally with names like MGM Resorts, with names like Caesars Entertainment on them, because those are not just pillars of the community. Those are pillars and their own foundations are the pillars of those buildings, which were built on the backs of donors. This is an entire campus that exists because the Thomas and Mack families, two pioneering families in Las Vegas, set aside 330 acres as real estate folks saying, you know what, when we become a grown-up city, we're going to need a university, right? And man, that was some foresight, right? So without philanthropists, none of this exists. Without those two beautiful Las Vegas families, none of this exists, at least in the way it does today. So that's what we do here on the foundation side.
So what are some of the specific programs or touch points for alumni engagement that are out there?
Yeah, so we are seeking to have 30% of our alumni actively engaged, meaning coming back to the campus by 2030. And what that means is doing things like coming to football games, which I don't know if you've heard, we're actually good at football, which is crazy because...
Not only good, I mean, the football experience is a lot different than what I had at Sam Boyd Stadium.
Right?
Yeah.
So we're looking to sell those games out. And that's what we'd love to do this fall, right? We're going to be opening the top rung, the top oval. And Las Vegas now has college football in a way that we never really did for you and me growing up, right? So engaging the university in those ways. Coming back and giving back in a way that can be in the form of a guest lecture, right? Folks like you, I'm sure, would be if you're a student, you're thrilled to get that real world experience. There's so many ways as an alum that you can come back and give back. So that's what we're seeking alums to do in our everyday here with the Alumni Association.
How do you know 30%? Like, how do you guys...
So you look at our database. Our database now is 150,000 alums, right? And so we want, in essence, that percentage of them to be engaged and to have them, sort of, again, registered in our database or at least counted in a way that looks at what they're doing and how their touch points are working out with UNLV today.
All right, so go to the foundation side now. So 150,000 alums in your database, 30% engagement. What kind of metrics do you look for on the foundation side?
So on the foundation side, we have some really big things coming up. We are actually building a brand new Lee Business School building. It will be at Harmon and Maryland Parkway. We've never had a grand entrance to the entire campus until now. We're now building a welcome to UNLV sign that will be worthy of and equal to the welcome to Las Vegas sign, we hope, right? A place that says effectively, come on in. Right?
Is it already designed?
So we've got the designs done. We announced at the Lee Business School Business Hall of Fame the other night, this was just last week, that we are going forward with this. This will be our next major project. And of course, that entails a fundraise, right? In the same way that the fundraise built the Smith Center for Performing Arts, in the same way that it did for, as I mentioned, Hospitality Hall, these pillars of our community. That's what we're going to be building next. We also are going to be building, for those who are on this side of the universe, a new fine arts building, which will also be right there along Maryland Parkway. So talk about creating sidewalk appeal rather. Maryland Parkway has not long been a drive filled with UNLV experiences, right? It's not like we have a bunch of sidewalk appeal, curb appeal, in a city that's really good at curb appeal. This is a city that's maybe the best in the world at curb appeal. Do you remember when the Mirage volcano used to create automobile crashes out front because it was just such a mind-blowing piece of genius work of curb appeal, right? Las Vegas has always been that. UNLV is not. UNLV is gorgeous. I mean, when you walk through this campus, you see some of the most beautiful spaces in all of Las Vegas. You'd never know that driving along Flamingo. Right? You'd never guess that even if you go to Thomas and Mack Center, games. But inside, we have a gorgeous campus. What we need is sort of a welcome to UNLV sign. That will happen in the form of the Lee Business School building that we're going to put at that very important entrance at Harmon and Maryland.
Please tell me you're going to replicate the volcano.
That would be cool. We will if donors, wink, wink, right, are up for it.
I think Virgin should. Is it not Virgin? It's Hard Rock.
That's right.
Hard Rock should donate for displacing the
tore one down.
volcano on the Strip. They should replicate
put
it.
one up. Yes. It's only
It's
fair.
on them for sure. So you mentioned a lot of names. I've done about 60 of these episodes. One of my previous guests was Kevin Burke.
Love Kevin. Yeah.
It's interesting. You start something like this and you have this idea, like, I'm going to have a podcast. It's going to be called Takeaways. I'm going to talk to people that I've had life-changing takeaways from. And then you kind of not run out of those, but like you run out of those.
Yeah.
And so you go to your next ring. And a little bit ago, I emailed all the previous guests and I said, you've been a guest. You've had an experience. You know what it is. Who would you be interested in hearing on the Takeaways podcast? And your name came up twice. From Kevin Burke.
Oh, cool.
And from Michael Saltman.
Oh, I love both those guys. Yeah.
So when I was a young commercial real estate guy, there was a group called CMG Commercial Marketing Group, and they did this visionary award every year. And we wanted to give it to Michael Saltman for his visionary work on Midtown UNLV, which was what you talked about. UNLV has no curb appeal.
That's right.
Very little connectability. And he had this whole concept.
He did. It was a beautiful concept.
And some things in that project happened. A lot of things didn't. And I think the project all but got abandoned, but it's cool to hear.
Well, yeah. And I would
the
say
next variation.
Yeah. The UNLV has significant land holdings on the other side, which was always the hard part, right? Of Maryland. We did not have those land holdings until now. And so Midtown UNLV, and Michael Saltman deserves all the credit in the world. Carol Harder was also a huge fan of this, then President Carroll. And it's happening in a way that I would suggest the next 10 years will be transformative for Maryland Parkway in a way that changes the experience for somebody driving along that street. And once more, we've seen other universities do this. There are a number of streets in Phoenix that you drive down and you're just inundated with ASU. And you think about the way in which the university is ingrained in the community. We very much are ingrained in this community, right? This is a community that was educated at UNLV largely. And it's time to show that on Maryland Parkway.
So you said you love Kevin Burke. Tell me about Kevin Burke from your perspective.
Kevin sits on my board. And like
on the foundation board?
On the foundation board, right? And so
he's not a UNLV alumni.
So he's not, but he knows.
Shame on him.
This is what you do, though, right? If you want to, I would argue that our board is a pinnacle board, a life pinnacle board for those who are on it. I hope that I'm correct in assuming this for our board members. But people like Kevin know that, again, Kevin's a builder, right? And not just by profession, right? By disposition, Kevin is. And he knows, as the great builders in this town does, how fun building is. And I mentioned earlier how at the Gaming Institute, I used to woo people. We used to eat at the Mediterranean Cafe, which was right here down the road. And it's now called Paymons. Paymons is now on East Sahara, West Sahara. But back then, I used to have people by the time the hummus arrived. Because I would say, look, if you come to UNLV, you can build. You'll get to build here, right? In much the same way that you get to build in Las Vegas more generally. And that's been super attractive to people like Kevin Burke, right? Who now gets to be involved in building things like a brand new business school building, a brand new College of Fine Arts building. We have a School of Education building that's next in need because that building is where my grandmother got her degree. God bless her. She's no longer with us, but she got a Nevada Southern degree and went to school in those buildings. Those buildings need to be replaced with state of the art. That's what we do at universities in general and at UNLV in particular. We just do it at Vegas speed and UNLV.
I was selling the Southwest Gas headquarters on Spring Mountain that they've been in for 40 some odd years.
Yeah.
And it was a 40-year-old campus, more or less. Yeah. And in our industry, there's a term called adaptive reuse. So you take what's there, you adapt it and reuse it for something different, because office buildings on Spring Mountain is not what Spring Mountain today is known for.
Yeah, now it's Chinatown.
And I sort of joke about, so you have to be set up for adaptive reuse. There's zoning codes that have to be, like, there's setbacks that you can't take a property like that and try to adopt it for today's codes. There's things you need to have levity for. So I joke that adaptive reuse in Las Vegas is when Steve Wynn opens the Treasure Island. He's standing out there. He's got the two ships and the cannons, and he's on TV and he's saying, "Yeah, Captain of the Armada, fire!" And a cannon shoots, but like the fake cannonball shoots over to where the Bellagio is now. It's like we blow it up and we start over.
That's right.
And that's our adaptive reuse here in Las Vegas.
What an amazing moment that was, by the way, when
it's like imprinted in my head.
The pirates at Treasure Island blew up the dunes so that we could build the Bellagio. Magic, right? And what an electric time. And I think we're still in them, right? I don't know if you remember this. UNLV had an ad campaign for its basketball team the year we won the national championship. But the most amazing thing is they did it at the beginning of that season. They didn't know they were going to win a national championship. But the ad campaign was "The Big Year is Here." I don't know if you remember. The Big Year is Here. It was a picture of Larry Johnson and Stacey Augmon on Sunrise Mountain looking over a tiny strip and at night, right, with the strip in the background. And it very boldly said, "The big year is here." And then we manifested that. Mm-hmm. And in my memory, that feels so Las Vegas, right? It didn't exist. And then we said it, and then we made it happen in a way that was pretty gutsy. The big year is here was an amazing advertise. I mean, what if somebody got hurt and we didn't even make it to the NCAA tournament that year, right? We'd look like idiots. And yet the big year is here was the name of the advertising campaign the year we won the national championship, right? What's also fascinating to me is literally when that was unveiled was the moment that the Mirage opened. The same month. That year began in November. The UNLV season began in November, which is when the Mirage opened in November of '89, right? They won the national championship then the following.
Who was behind that campaign for UNLV?
Whoever UNLV, whatever brilliant marketers were in the UNLV athletic department, right?
Down,
yes.
Yeah. What were you guys
All that
thinking?
was happening at the same time, right? And it was the big year. But here's what I would say. The big years are still here, right? And the big years are the next 10 years. For us at UNLV, but even in Las Vegas.
That's going to be the show title, by the way.
The big year is here.
Yeah, for sure.
Big years are here.
So Kevin, I want to go back to him for a second because when he connected us, he said specifically talk about Harry Tech Park, talk about the land in North Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah. So UNLV has 2,000 acres. That when we
went from the 300 that the Thomas and Max sort of designated to now, how many? 2,000.
So it's like, 7 UNLVs, right, fit in the land that we have. And I remember when we got it was a Lands Act bill more than a decade and a half ago, I want to say. And I remember thinking, thanks a lot for giving us land out in Utah. This is way up there, right? And sure enough, now the 215 abuts the land. Now it's still land that needs to be approved and examined thoroughly because that's where the red flag exercises at Nellis used to take place.
Okay.
They used to not drop bombs out in the middle of Nevada, in these test runs. They do it in town because it wasn't really in town back then, was it? So we got some cleanup to do, but once we do, that is one of the great.
So how big is the North Las Vegas parcel?
2,000.
It's just up there is 2,000.
Yeah.
Harry Tech Park's 120 acres, right?
That's right.
Okay.
There's 3,000 acres that North Las Vegas has next to us that they've said, basically, let's build this together.
Okay.
So this is one of the great real estate opportunities. And one of the things we've demonstrated at the Tech Park is we can do these things with the private sector. We can do these things in public-private partnerships. We can do these things in a way that enhance both the university and the private sector. It's T-Mobile, one of the companies that's out there, loves the fact that they have access to our engineers, right? These are things where both entities can grow when we develop together. So those 2,000 acres represent one of the last great canvases on which to paint in all of Southern Nevada, because I don't need to tell you, we're surrounded by BLM land, right? And we're surrounded by a mountain range, and we're surrounded in ways that don't afford us many opportunities to paint quite like this.
When do you think that starts to get activated or developed?
We keep being told it's right around the corner. Our latest timeline, I believe, is in 2 years.
In North Las Vegas?
North
I
Las
would
Vegas.
think 10.
So, yeah.
I'm surprised to hear too.
I think North Las Vegas has actually got a great economic development team, right? And you've seen that reflected in, for example, obviously on the warehouse side and the Amazon side and the Fanatics side, right? Like all these mega companies that live out there. But it's a pretty business-friendly environment on the economic development team. So, look out. We're building.
Harry Tech Park is 120 acres in the Southwest. It's like Buffalo and Sunset.
Yep. Sunset and Durango. Yeah.
And the first building that was built there was an office building, right? 4-story.
Yeah, the first UNLV building, was that.
And who was like the anchor tenant there or department?
UNLV.
What UNLV is like, what was in there actually?
So our economic development office was basically, our office of people who were, who were tasked with building out that campus. And now we have over 100 companies out there, from student startups that are just one person solopreneur, and that solopreneur is a 21-year-old, up through T-Mobile, right? And all points in between. So 100 plus companies, all of which are sort of feeding off of this innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem in a way that I don't think any of us would have predicted. I remember Harry Reid was there for the groundbreaking, for the grand opening of the building. And he had in retrospect, a cute, typically Harry Reid line. He said, when I was a kid, we used to call things cornerstones. I think this will be a cornerstone. And sure enough, it has been, but I can't believe that he even thought that this would have two tech unicorns, right? Companies that started in Las Vegas that are now valued at over $1 billion.
Which
in
two?
GeoComply and Sightline. These are two companies that were both founded in 2012, both tech companies, right? And they're both valued at north of $1 billion. I don't think Harry Reid dreamed that up. When Duke started Research Triangle
What are
Park,
the two companies?
GeoComply and Sightline.
Oh, I saw.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
And so,
what do they do?
So GeoComply is a geofencing and cybersecurity firm, and Sightline's a fintech company.
I know a little bit about geofencing. But can you elaborate on?
So geofencing is how when you go over the California state line, you can't bet on sports anymore, right? That's what geofencing does on a tech level, right? Fences off jurisdictions and make sure that folks aren't illegally doing things in another state that they're allowed to do in one state or country.
Got it.
Yeah. And so, I can't imagine when Duke started their Research Triangle Park, for the first years, they just really struggled. And part of it was the idea was brand new, right? We're going to build a university private sector partnership. But man, it's since taken off. But it took them a long time to do so. We're 4 years in, and all of the land is committed to things.
The whole 120 acres?
Yes, to things like the Film Studios project, which of course is reliant on some legislative action. We'll see how that plays out.
We're pretty good at saying yes in Las Vegas.
We're pretty good at getting to yes.
I should say Nevada in that instance.
We're pretty good at getting to yes. Yeah. And so that's been the attitude we've taken.
How does that tie into research?
So it's research and technology. So you're looking at, for example, with T-Mobile, the opportunities for research in engineering on things like 7G, which is what they're working on now, right? Not 6G, but what's coming next. To look at the ways in which Axes.ai is an AI company that has engaged our researchers here on AI in a way that's led to a huge project, and they call it an AI hub. A big chunk of which is led out of our International Gaming Institute, which is now also amazingly an AI center of excellence. So again, partnering with centers of excellence here on campus in a wide variety of ways is what we do at the Tech Park. And so, as I've said over and over again, there are lots of great places to set up your office in Las Vegas. There's one place you can set up and partner directly with UNLV through the offices on site, and it's the Harry Reid Tech Park.
So I saw born in Las Vegas, went to UNLV, and then I get to travel around the country and visit other college campuses. And I remember I was sent to the Boston area, which if you're from there, you kind of know it's not just
campuses. Yeah.
Yeah. So my boss at the time, Andy Borans, he dedicated his life to our fraternity, 30 or 40 years, basically. He was also idiot savant, remembers things. And just beyond. I mean, I'll give you an example of that. So I'm sent over to the Northeast, kid from Vegas. They gave me a rental car, and I opened the trunk. I'm like, what is this thing? And they all laughed at me. It's called a scraper. And a scraper is there's a brush, and there's an end. That. I'm like, what do I do with it? And it wasn't winter yet, but well, you'll know when you can use it to move the snow from the back of your tires, get all the snow off. So they sent me there. I stayed with one of our alumni that has his house set up for the person who's in my role. That's the eastern home base. And then there's a thing called a nor'easter that comes through. So we're snowed in for a couple of days. I don't know what this is either. I'm like, I could leave. No, you can't. Okay. So
why don't they have the T and the H in the word nor apostrophe Easter? Yeah.
It's funny. That's how I'm just saying what they said to me.
Yeah.
So then finally I'm released, and I'm driving from now, Boston area to Yale University, and my dumbass at the time, young kid, it was way before there's GPS on your phone or even in your car. I had to print out on MapQuest. I didn't print out where I was going. I just kind of knew the direction. So I called Andy, who was in our headquarters in Indianapolis. I'm like, I screwed up. I got in the car. I don't know where I'm going. So where are you? I'm like, I'm on this freeway. I'm close to this exit. He, from his head at his desk, told me exactly how to get to Yale, and specifically when I would turn off, like which building I would see.
Right. Yeah, I can't do that. I don't have that.
So he's one of these.
He's one of those types. Yeah, I don't have that.
So he sends me to the Boston area. Now I'm going to go to all the schools there, waving the AE Pi flag. That's the fraternity. And I remember him saying to me, he's like, "This is like serious university town." He's like, "You've got Harvard, you've got MIT, you've got Boston University, you've got Brandeis, you've got, I think, Northeastern, you've got
Boston College.
And they're all right there. He's like, it's not like UNLV.
Right.
And he got kind of backtracked.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. But when I think about that story, to think about, like, I know this. I know I go to UNLV on Maryland Parkway. And now you're telling me that there's also UNLV or a presence at Buffalo and Sunset. And now you're telling me to totally reframe all that. And there's going to be something. Is there something UNLV in the medical corridor too?
We have the whole medical district, right, which is headquartered by the UNLV Medical School on Charleston. So yeah, and this happens, right, in urban universities where you have multiple campuses, multiple sites. And, you have to figure out transportation in between each of them. That's one of the things we're grappling with here. So yeah, this is what grown-up universities do, right? And we end up in that headspace a lot in Las Vegas. We're like, oh, this is what other cities have. They have a performing arts center, right? That is the community's performing arts center, and where they bring in, I think Hamilton's coming next week, right, to the Smith Center for Performing Arts as we speak, as we record this podcast. And, we kind of look at other cities and say, oh, that's what they do when they reach a certain age. And with us, it's that we're just young. I mean, I always use the metaphor you asked me earlier about my daughters. Ava is going through a growth period where she'll wake up in the morning and the back of her knees are hurting. And she'll be like, Dad, the back of my knees hurt. And I'll say, yeah, Ava, you grew an inch last night and it hurts, right? And that's Las Vegas. We grew an inch last night and it hurts. A lot of the things that we complain about at Las Vegas are pretty easily attributable to youth and to growth spurts. And the pain behind the back of our knee because we grew an inch last night. It's not that we're bad people or a bad community or we suck and don't know how to do things. It's that we grew like crazy over both of our lifetimes. All that you and I have known is growth. And if you talk to companies like Las Vegas Sands, which all of a sudden were global companies, managing growth is one of the hardest things for the biggest businesses on earth to do. So it can be hard for us too. It's okay that it was hard and is hard for us too here in Las Vegas, I think.
What's going to be up there in the 2,000 acres?
We'll see. That's actually up to us and our partners who are interested in developing with us. We'll certainly be, I would imagine, in RFP land, where we'll be issuing RFPs and saying, hey, send us your dreams, right? And let's look at the ways in which we can co-develop out here. There has to be an educational component. And as we've shown at the tech park, that's actually something that's pretty easy to put together if you've got some imaginative folks at a table. And so we've seen that across the board with all the things that exist out there. Now we've got a much larger canvas on which to paint with the 2,000 acres.
So talk about that RFP process. I remember with Harry Reid Tech Park, UNLV was sort of running it, and then they put out an RFP, and the Gardner company was ended up.
That's right.
And Gardner is out of Salt Lake
City.
Yeah, and they have a proven track record on how to develop these kinds of things.
That's right. They'd done it with the University of Utah. And so I was not involved in that RFP, but I would imagine that was probably compelling to those who were, who were judging. So it's still early to, we don't have any parameters of an RFP. We don't even have an RFP. But I would imagine there will be similar processes now, right? And what we want to do is let the world dream with us, right? And say, okay, what ideas do you have? Show us what you've done. Show us what you would do, and let's dream together in a way that has been proven in communities like Austin and communities like Research Triangle Park, which is Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina, in areas like Silicon Valley, in Northern California. Let's build that here, and not necessarily just like that. Let's Las Vegas-size it, right? Let's make it uniquely ours. Let's
Las Vegas-size it.
That was a phrase. I just said it again.
I love that.
Yeah.
So let's kind of switch gears because this is not in your official bio, but first time I actually came across you was a TED Talk, probably 10 years ago. I'm guessing. I think you did it 11 years ago. The topic was about how smart the Las Vegas workforce is, and then you came back for a second bite at the TED apple.
That's right. 10 years later,
about a year ago.
Every 10 years, I've done one.
Is that your TED cadence?
The timeline. Yeah, apparently.
And that talk was about the fun economy, which I said earlier, you kind of teased out these sorts of things. So start with why Las Vegas is so smart.
Yeah. So my reasoning there, and there was multifaceted, right? There were some molecular neuro levels, but the one that really caught fire was social intelligence. So if social intelligence outpredicts IQ or GPA, which it does, by the way, in terms of business success, life success, relationship success, all those things, well, suddenly Las Vegas might be smarter than we think, because who is exercising the social intelligence muscle more than the person at the front desk at 3 p.m. on a Friday when the whole world is checking in? You don't know what slice of humanity is going to show up, right? And it turns out when you exercise those muscles, they get stronger, just like every other muscle. But when you exercise those interactive muscles in your brain, and there are very specific structures associated with that, they actually get stronger. People say, well, I'm not a very socially intelligent animal. Well, it's the same thing as saying, my biceps aren't very strong. They can be if you exercise them, right? And in no place on earth do you exercise the social intelligence muscles quite like you do in Las Vegas. One of the metaphors or one of the comparisons that I used in that TED Talk was, if you live and work in Wall Street and you're numbers phobic, you're math phobic, you hate numbers, you probably don't last very long, right? And if you live and work in Silicon Valley and you're a technophobe, you probably don't last long. And if you hate people, you're not going to last long in Las Vegas. So in a world where social intelligence is the new way to be smart, our understanding of intelligence is bending in the direction of Las Vegas. So back to your audience of folks who might be looking to woo, a biotech firm from San Diego to move up the I-15 here to Las Vegas. If you look at the workforce and you look solely at the educational outcomes on average in Las Vegas, you might dismiss us as not very smart. But that would miss out on the most important way to be smart, which is social intelligence. And this is a workforce that has got that. And in a world where we're just starting to appreciate why that's so important. So that was one of the theses of why Las Vegas is smart, which, by the way, was the most amazing experience and catapulted me into international conversations on social intelligence and led to the development of this second TED Talk.
So I'm thinking back in the business world, the presenters' books, it was higher for EQ, not IQ. And that's what you presented.
And guess who's really good at that?
Las Vegas.
Yeah. People who work in this environment, because activating those neurons is a way to get socially and emotionally intelligent. And in this world, arguably, and that's another thing that's really tough to AI out. It's really tough to automate out social and emotional intelligence. And guess what city's really good at that? Las Vegas. Tony Hsieh, who, by the way, was a freshman dorm mate of mine at Harvard, then, of course, became the Zappos founder and came here in Las Vegas.
There's a fun fact.
What's that? Yeah, isn't that crazy? Like how worlds collide, right? I've known him since my freshman year. And he came here because of the social intelligence of the Las Vegas workforce, because he knew he was going to be a phone bank-centric, customer service-centric Zappos. And he knew there were a whole lot of people who were really, really good at that. That's why we got him, right? So if we convince biotech firms of the same thing, I think we're on the precipice of maybe a boom.
And this is already 10-year-old material, so it's tried and true. The other thing I was thinking about, I don't know if you included it or if there was research around it, but so even if I'm not personally working in the hospitality industry, so to speak, however, I'm a resident of Las Vegas, and it is just like influence, nature, nurture. It is around me. Yeah, like anyone who lives here and just has a day-to-day here, you go somewhere else and you realize how great we are and what's missing when it's not Vegas kind of stuff. Is it also because of that? Like, I
think so. I think it's not just in the hospitality industry.
It does ripple through the community.
Yeah. One of the ways I've observed this unscientifically is at a Golden Knights game, because inevitably at a Golden Knights game, when you play, Calgary and it's, February, half of Calgary comes here because it's February in Calgary, right? And then you sit next to one of these Calgary Flames fans And you ask them, so how's your trip been? Right. And they're not used to this, right? They're used to going to Edmonton and maybe getting into a fight with the person in the seat next to them because of the rivalry thing. And the whole, how's your trip been? And then hearing them say, it's actually amazing. Like the hospitality here has been incredible. And you start to think, well, maybe, just maybe that's something that's, I don't know, in the water here, or at the very least, it's not something that that actually, it's not in our genes. It's actually in our exercised makeup. It's in our nurture, and it's in our everyday in ways that penetrate, I think, the whole community. I also think, and this is maybe more of a controversial take, but I think it selects for kindness. Because if you're not kind, and a lot of kindness is acting kind, right? And if you're in the hospitality industry, you have to act kind. Then again, you don't last long. So why wouldn't it be the case that we're not also kinder than the norm, if that's the case? So maybe that's a future TED Talk.
Maybe.
Kinder than the norm.
Kinder, that's good. It was funny, we were talking, so probably my second Golden Knights game. Now, again, grew up in Vegas. No professional sports teams,
right?
Israeli parents, so not even American sports. I don't know anything about hockey,
right.
And it was a Canadian fan, I forgot which team, that he's teaching me hockey. He's telling me about, like, okay, here's what icing is, here's what they're circulating like around behind the goal line. He was like explaining the game to me. It was so nice. And then the other thing, when the Raiders came here, so friends of mine, we all flew up to Oakland when it was announced. So we got to experience a game in Oakland. But like the Raiders reputation and the Raider fan reputation and the period between it was announced and Allegiant being open, then there was COVID and all that. But everyone's like, oh my God, how could Vegas accept this, these fans?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Like, I already knew. I was like, Vegas doesn't tolerate that.
It's not going to be that.
That is not going to be.
Yeah. And it isn't.
And it isn't. Yeah.
It isn't. No,
I actually saw on Instagram, there was like a reel that came by, and it was at Allegiant, and it was two fans fighting that were actually the other team. They were both
right. Yeah, I remember that conversation. We were involved in, actually for a while, it was a sort of top secret effort to bring the Raiders here. And I remember that being part of the conversation, was the sort of unruliness of the Oakland fan base in the Oakland Coliseum. And of course, part of that's price, right? I mean, we just are such an expensive ticket that folks aren't going to risk getting kicked out by brawling, maybe. But it is absolutely also a Las Vegas hospitality thing.
So that's the EQ of the Las Vegas workforce, and you came back for the fun economy.
I came back for
What's
more.
that, and why is it significant? Actually, your take on it was fascinating.
Oh, thank you. That's such a nice thing to say. The fun economy is very simply defined. We actually have trademarked that phrase. It's the global tourism industry plus the global sports industry plus the global entertainment industry, right? So 3 definable and defined industries. When you add those 3 industries together, it makes up 14% of all of the money spent on Earth. So tourism alone is 1 in 10 dollars, pesos, yen spent on planet Earth. So once you get to that level, it's no longer dismissible as unimportant, right? People think of our vacations or travel as something that, we do for fun, but it's not worth talking about Monday through Friday or in serious places like California.
Or even like you take one of the 3.
Yeah.
But we have 3.
Yes. And this is the place that intertwines those 3, tourism, sports, and entertainment, like no place on Earth. And then exports it to the rest of the world, right? Once more, this model is being mimicked all over the planet. I just got back from Thailand. This is one of the things that they're looking at Thailand is, how do we build the fun economy? How do we build tourism, sports, and entertainment in a way that makes us a hub? Famously, a year or 2 ago, Taylor Swift signed a deal with Singapore that she would only perform in Singapore in all of Southeast Asia and skip the other countries for a little bit of extra money. And of course, that was a fun economy move that helped Thailand recognize, oh, we better compete on this front. And thinking about if it's 14% now, where's it headed? When I ask people that, and people usually say up. It's going to be higher than that in the future, but they don't really have a great sense of why. Here's my version of the why. We live in a moment where 50% of the people who live on the planet are middle class or above for the first time in the history of humans. For the first time, all of us who live on planet Earth, half of us are middle class or above. For most of human history, the vast majority of us were very, very, very poor, right? The story of all of our ancestors is one of poverty, with like 1%, aristocracy, elite, right? We now are at 50%, and according to a Brookings analysis, we're headed towards 2/3 of planet Earth being middle class or above. And we miss out on that in America because we're focused on the middle class of America, and we missed that 35 million people joined the middle class last year in India. 35 million. So that number is going up and up and up. And the first thing you start to buy when you escape the world where the only thing you can buy are the necessities, the first thing you start to buy are Taylor Swift concerts and trips and ball games. The first thing you start to buy is fun. Mm-hmm. So the future of the economy is bending in the direction of Las Vegas. Back to our point about how some cities had a wonderful manufacturing base. Well, that's not so great for St. Louis and Cleveland now, right? They've moved into other industries, but the future looks more and more like Las Vegas in a way that's global, in a way that's reflective of where the customer base of planet Earth is headed.
A thing occurred to me. So in the workforce with millennials and whatnot, you get into this education around they don't want to buy things, they want to buy experiences. Mm-hmm. Is that true for that age demographic globally, not just in the U.S.?
Yes.
Do you know?
Globally, there's only one.
It's like a compounding thing, right?
It is, yeah.
People moving into the middle class, but also this generation being more about experience.
That's the second reason why is younger people value experience. And you asked if that's a global phenomenon. It is, because TikTok's a global phenomenon, right? Culture is shared across cultures in a way it was. You and I had to have a pen pal in Thailand if we wanted to learn about Thailand.
I had pen pals.
Did you have pen pals? Were they in other countries?
No, they were more like from camp. Like stay in touch by letter.
I mean, if I wanted to learn something about what it was like for a Chinese kid growing up, I had to hope that my elementary school created a pen pal program with Chinese kids. Mm-hmm. That was the only way to really have any kind of remotely personal experience, right? Now culture is shared infinitely and immediately and instantly, right? And so as a result, you have these values, and I actually think this is a good value, of buying experience over stuff. And it turns out the happiness literature that's come out of the field of psychology suggested that people who buy experience are happier. Well, guess where experience lives? It lives in the fun economy. So maybe Las Vegas is not just doing good for the economy. Maybe it's doing good, whole stop, period. Maybe it's doing good by virtue of being a driver of the fun economy, which in turn is creating experiences, which in turn are the things that lead to a more enduring happiness than buying stuff.
So it's hard for me to wrap my head around what is it exactly that we're exporting and how. Like, this is easy, right? We make the best pen in the world and we can export it, but we're exporting, not just decades, but within our DNA and the influence of everyone here, we have figured this thing out at a time when there's a movement in the middle class and demographically people wanting to have experiences. What exactly are we exporting? And how do we export it?
Yeah, we're exporting fun. In the form of buildings, in the form of what we're looking at Thailand is potentially a whole development along the water, which is not dissimilar to the development along the water in Boston that has rejuvenated that whole area. The area in Boston where there's a shiny new Wynn that looks just like the Wynn here in Las Vegas. It's just in the heart of this Boston's a conservative cultural place, right? To have a Las Vegas casino the landscape of Boston is a pretty remarkable thing in and of itself, but that's also where they're building the brand new MLS stadium, soccer stadium for their soccer team out there, right? It's becoming an entertainment complex in a way that is Las Vegas driven, that Las Vegas is the engine or at the core of that experience. And it's not just happening in Las Vegas, it's happening in places like Boston and places like Thailand.
So what does Vegas get back, and who in Vegas gets whatever it is?
In much the same way that Ford sold, Mustangs and Broncos all over the world, and the money came back to the headquarters in Detroit. Wynn is selling those experiences in Macau and Boston, and the money comes back to the headquarters on Las Vegas Boulevard. It's no different. It is different, of course, but in many ways, this is the same phenomenon, just with a different product. So Las Vegas companies benefit from Macau customer patterns, right? Because those executive and headquarters-based team members live here. They live, in Spring Valley and Green Valley. They live in Summerlin and North Las Vegas. They live here, and they drive global companies that are Fortune 500 companies that don't make things, they make experience and fun.
So similar to how like UFC wants to go back to the cities where they were to expand the brand, the experience, and then eventually I imagine you create more fans, they want to come to the motherland, so to speak.
UFC's another uniquely Las Vegas.
That one doesn't get talked about as much as it should when we talk about sports in Las Vegas.
And it would not have happened in any other city. When you listen to people like Lawrence Epstein, who's their COO, so crucial in the globalization of the UFC, he talks about how this could only have happened here. This could only have happened in Las Vegas. This could only have been born, and it wasn't, they bought it when it was on the scrap heap, so it wasn't technically born here, but it really was raised here, and it really became a global phenomenon here. And they argue that it only could have happened here. That this never could have happened in New York, which is famous for being headquarters of millions of...
the thing that was born here was after they bought it, that they regulated it.
That's right.
The Fertittas and Dana White, they wanted it regulated.
That's right.
Which is like same as our history on gaming.
That's exactly right.
It's illegal everywhere else. It's regulated here.
So that story is another, I think, great undertold Las Vegas story, because the Fertittas knew that the moment that gaming got regulated was the moment it got massively profitable. We romanticized the mafia era. That was not a profitable era. They were not a global phenomenon. They did not have access to the world's capital. They had access to Cleveland's capital, but they didn't have access to global banks, right? The cleanup moment was the greatest moment to happen in the history of Las Vegas business, right? In terms of the sheer economic impact of that. So the Fertittas smartly looked at that and said, hey, if this leaves the scrap heap of, John McCain famously called it, what do you call it? Human cockfighting was what he called the UFC, and wasn't allowed in most all states. If we regulate it, and they did a brilliant thing when they brought in Mark Ratner, was the former head of the Nevada Boxing Commission, to be the chief regulator. And they knew that if we follow this Las Vegas model, and it is a Las Vegas model of cleaning it up and regulating it, we can see gains, we can see profits soar, we can see audiences grow in a way that is perhaps uniquely Las Vegas. And so I think you're right to invoke that as an illustration of one of the reasons why that could have only happened maybe in Las Vegas, the UFC.
You could do a TED Talk on Las Vegas models that you don't know but you experience in your hometown.
This is good, brother. We got a bunch of them here.
You mentioned earlier, like you did the TED Talk the first time and it opened up a whole new world. Tell me about that experience. So who says to you should do a TED Talk? After you say yes, what happens?
Yeah.
And then after you give it, what happens?
Yeah. So that's a fascinating phenomenon. And I'll tell you my experience. I don't know how universal it is. It was a wonderful experience because they actually reached out to me. They were going to have one here in Las Vegas and they asked me to speak at it. So I didn't go through the normal sort of process of applying and that sort of thing, but they asked me to kind of open that one, if I remember correctly. I think I was the first one. And then they assigned me a speaking coach, and it was Amy Ayub, who's a famous speaking coach here in Las Vegas, has been speaking coach for everybody from Richard Bryan to Kenny Gwynn to Harry Reid. And I thought at the time, well, I've been teaching a long time. I don't need a speaking coach. I've been getting up in front of audiences my whole professional life. I let the other folks have a coach, right? And then I met Amy and I realized, this is what I've needed my entire life. And she became my speaking coach. And that transformed everything. Amy Ayub, Ayoub. She's the Zen Speaker is the name of her company. She's the best speaking coach I've ever worked with. And she helped me get very economical, very precise. She helped with my cadence, and in a way that I didn't know I needed. Most people don't know how much public speaking help they need. They really need, and don't know that there are professionals out there. And so having her as my coach made that first experience just pristine. And then all of a sudden I was getting calls from abroad. I am now actually working with the City of London on their whole approach to the entertainment district around the West End where the theaters are and all the English Premier League stadiums that are in and around London in a way that built off. If I hadn't done those TED Talks, that never would have happened. So it gives you an audience, obviously, that's immediate, and it gives you a reach and scope that you can never dream of before you do it. So I can't recommend it enough. It was a great experience.
Are you a paid speaker? Like, do you get brought in?
No, you don't get paid.
No, I'm not for TED, but like,
for other stuff. Yeah.
Like, do people email you and say, "Hey, we've got a thing you'd be great for"?
I have literally never marketed even for a millisecond on the speaking front. But yeah, now I get paid to talk all over the world, which is an incredible thing for a kid from Walter B. Long Elementary School in East Las Vegas who didn't know he had anything to say. I also had a teacher once. We talked earlier about impactful people and moments, and we both had them. I had one teacher who wrote on my midterm, "Why do you let all these other students talk all the time? You have something to say." And I tried to write that on papers when I became a professor later on, whenever I had an opportunity, because sometimes you get a paper and you're like, wow, the student's been silent, but she's a genius, right? You have something to say is something that not enough of us get told. And so it allows the TED Talk allowed a platform, but also that realization that you have something to say that might resonate is a powerful realization.
So interesting thing comes up when you mention that you didn't seek out TED. Somebody asked you.
Yeah.
What goes through your mind when someone says we'd like you to do a TED Talk? Are you immediately yes? Are you imposter syndrome?
I wasn't. Imposter syndrome. 100% imposter syndrome. So when I first was asked, it scared me. And I was not scared in my professional life. At that point, we were cruising with an international gaming institute that had reached the whole world. I was talking all over the world. I had this great life. And I saw downside, right? This could be humiliating. I could screw it up. And then it's going to be on the internet forever. And then I'll become a meme.
Did you ask yourself, like, what am I even going to say?
Yeah. What am I even going to say? I didn't at that time have a TED Talk in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And it was my amygdala talking, right? And it's one of those moments where you realize, oh, because I'm scared, that's actually why I should do it.
How does that work?
Well, I remember thinking that to myself, thinking like, okay, the part where you're scared actually tells you something about where you are in terms of your comfort zone and where, right? And that probably means you should give it a shot. Right. It probably means you should jump. It probably means you should go after this. And in this instance, it's triggering the parts of my amygdala that are insecurity monsters, that are imposter syndrome. And when that kind of fear arises, that's when you're like, oh, because those insecurity monsters are arising, that's probably a pretty good signal that I should do this. That's probably a pretty good sign. And that's been a good impulse for me over the years is when you're scared, for those reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're scared because you've hiked to the top of Mount Charleston and you're scared you might fall, you shouldn't jump, right? But when you're scared because of the insecurity monsters, that actually, and I'm somebody who wakes up in the mornings with the insecurity monsters nipping at my heels. For some reason, they show up in the mornings, like when I wake up. I think that's, it's called cortisol, is the stress hormone that pools in your body overnight, right? I got a lot of that. And then over the course of a day, the voices get a little quieter in my head. I think I'm admitting to all sorts of mental illness diagnoses here on camera. But
most people have.
But I think most people have that, and I think when we talk about it, it actually defangs them. It actually makes them less powerful. And doing the TED Talk made them less powerful because it made me see a different world that I could talk to.
What was your process to getting from I don't have a TED Talk in me, I don't even know what to say, to this is what I'm going to talk about?
Yeah. Part of what happened was there was in the TED Talk community, because people talk about TED Talks, there was sort of a skepticism that Las Vegas even deserved a TED Talk event. Because they're like, what are they going to talk about? Like the sequins on the headdress of a showgirl? Like Las Vegas is dumb, right? Mm-hmm. TED Talks are smart. TED Talks are places of where smart people get together and talk smart, right? And so I was like, all right, then, F off, right? Why Las Vegas is smart is the name of my TED Talk. And I tried to counterpunch or maybe preemptively punch, right, before they could go after us in a way that became kind of a mantra. So that's literally the process in my own head, was hearing those voices, right? And they were real, right? There were skeptics who thought, well, TED Talks are for smart communities. They're for like, Cambridge, not Las Vegas, right? And the mockery, right? We've all heard it, right? Like we all hear it, even when we don't actually hear it. We hear it ringing in our ears.
Sure.
Sometimes from memory. And that helped. That helped.
Very cool. How about we do some rapid fire takeaways?
Okay.
Is there a must-read book you'd recommend to everybody?
A book that still is with me years later. is a book written by a Stanford business school professor named Shirzad Chamine, Chamine. And it's called Positive Intelligence, which he argues is what comes after emotional and social intelligence. And it's the ability to look out at the landscape and see opportunity and positive outcomes, as opposed to what we typically do. And we were just talking about this, instead of looking out at it with imposter syndrome and negativity. We have a negativity bias for really good evolutionary reasons. If our ancestors did not have it, then they probably would have wandered out of curiosity over to a bush that was shaking, and they would have been eaten by an animal, right? Mm. The world was really dangerous for the vast majority of human history. So we have this really strong ability to look out at the world and see threat, that if we didn't have it, we wouldn't be here. It's good. We have good reason to have it. It's just not useful in 2025 when we're probably totally not going to die today, right? We don't have the kinds of threats in our everyday. And yet we see the threats we do have. Oh, my coworker just walked by me in the hallway and didn't even say hi, as an existential, life-threatening moment, right? Oh, God, that means I'm probably talking to my boss and they're probably going to fire me. And then my kids are probably, how am I going to pay for college? And they're not going to get into college, and they're right. And we write this story because if
no one does that, do they?
if we weren't good at writing that story, oh my gosh, that bush is shaking and there's probably a tiger behind it, then we wouldn't be here. The problem is it's not useful today. And what he finds in his research is the people who are really, whose brains are broken, mm-hmm. who really are good at having positive intelligence, he calls it PQ, are the people who thrive, are the people who do really, really well, because they see, oh, that bush is shaking. Maybe it's shaking some berries loose, and maybe I can make a berry juice that now in this health craze, people could start to drink, and they become entrepreneurs, right? And successful entrepreneurs and CEOs have that a lot more than the general public, which tells us something about positive intelligence. Love that book.
So going from someone who was a good public speaker to now a professional TED Talker with a coach, probably more than one coach, what's one takeaway you would give or share about public speaking?
I like to say, love your topic, love your audience.
Double click on love your audience.
Love your topic, love your, if you love your audience, if you genuinely love them, it will go well. If they're like really cool friends that you love and you want them so badly to know about this thing you're talking about, it'll go well. And similarly, if you love your topic, it'll go well, right? Your enthusiasm for that topic will spill over into the audience. Love your topic, love your audience. If you have disdain for your audience, that's when public talks go bad, you can often see that that's where it's going bad, is that the disdain that they have for the audience. Maybe they're skeptical and you can feel it, or they ask a question that reveals it. But then it starts to go horribly wrong, right? Well, the opposite, when you genuinely love your audience, it goes well. Love your topic, love your audience.
So when you say love your audience, to me, where my head went was, you get into this topic of public speaking, and you did it yourself. The first question is, who is the audience?
Yeah.
Why? Because I want to add value to the audience.
That's right.
I could take what I think and believe, but if it doesn't land on this audience, it doesn't.
That's right.
It doesn't go well. So when you said love your audience,
that was the first thing I asked you when I walked in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you did. And
who's your audience? Remember that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What didn't occur to me is what I have to say, loving it, being passionate about it, and then just saying it to whatever audience could either convert them.
It's true.
Or not.
So then it becomes an audience that doesn't yet know about this magic you're about to share, right? And that's pretty powerful too, right? So if you have an open love for your audience and you just really, really want them to know about this stuff, it goes well. It goes well. And if you have that love for the topic, for the subject matter, and teachers, for example, have to teach a million different things, some of which you don't love, right? That can be hard. But you have to find the part that you love,
the
right?
teacher that's passionate about the topic that made you passionate about the topic you might not have thought about.
And even the things that are your least fun things to talk about in your class on, for example, research methods and statistics. It's kind of like, and Shirzad Chamine talks about this with people. There's something to love about every single person, right? And finding that thing can be hard, but it's a worthwhile activity. The same's true of topics to talk about, right? You find the thing that you love about a statistical technique that can open up doors to real estate, right? Or to looking at the Las Vegas Valley's worth of real estate in a new way. Ooh, that's a powerful tool, man. That thing is like the first day you figured out how to do batting average and calculate that when you're watching baseball. Wow, this is a new way to entirely understand all that's going on a baseball field in a new way. That's a powerful statistic, and even that can be fun.
You mentioned earlier when you were talking about your arc, you said you were ready for it. You know, these opportunities present themselves, but I was ready for it. How does someone stay ready or be ready for what's coming their way?
That's a really good question. I think it's about your conversations with the anxiety monsters, right? With the imposter syndrome voices, with the naysayers who are often way louder in your own head than they are out there in the real world. And in fact, those that are out in the real world, you imagine a whole conversation with them as opposed to the singular thing that they said, right? So in the same way that we were talking earlier about how talking about that kind of defangs, I think that's true about being ready. So when new opportunities arise, and it's about defanging the naysayers often in your own head, right? And getting into the part of your brain, and incidentally, that's the prefrontal cortex. That's not the amygdala where the fear lives in the back of your brain, in the midbrain, actually. That's the part of your brain where you got to think about is what are the opportunities here, right? Instead of doing the thing where, as I said earlier, the person walked by and seems like they hate me and, oh my gosh, my whole world's going to fall apart now. Doing the opposite exercise, which is what are 3 great things that can come out of this, right? I'm going to leave my job and go into a new job. What are 3 great things that can happen, right? That exercise is not one our brain is inclined or even trained to do or even wired to do. And yet it's such a powerful exercise, and we can rewire our brains in that direction in a way that also can be powerful.
What's missing from Las Vegas present day, if anything?
Major League Baseball, the NBA, high-speed rail, true high-speed rail, right? That gets us to Southern California in a heartbeat. True connectivity with Phoenix to make us a north-south city and not just an east-west city, which is coming with the I-11. And a subway that hopefully is coming too, right? I think each of those actually individually are game changing. Major League Baseball is another game changer. The NBA is another game changer. The high-speed rail.
MLB is happening, right?
Is there
anything
happening
that would take that off course?
No, it's coming.
Then NBA.
Also coming. I don't think there's anything that takes it off.
It seems like an inevitability.
As close to an inevitability as we can possibly be at this stage.
True high-speed rail. Is that also coming?
I think it's coming, and I think
is this Brightline or is it something else?
I think again the question becomes about the experience, right? And that proof will be in the pudding, right? And is the experience one of seamless get from Southern California to Vegas in an easy, fast way, and in a way that Europeans and Japanese and Chinese take for granted, right? This is something that exists all over the world. We've not figured this out here in a way that really is missing. It's really missing. When you go on the high-speed rail in other countries, you think to yourself, my gosh, we need to figure this out. This is way better, way easier. You show up a few minutes before it takes off, and then pretty soon you're at 300 miles an hour going to the next town over, and it feels like you're riding on a cloud, right? How do we not have that in the United States all over?
That's a different podcast, I think.
Different podcast. I'm not the expert.
Is Phoenix, you mentioned that's coming too, connected
I-11,
Phoenix?
right?
Is that underway? Where's the status of that?
It's underway. There are a few last pieces of it to be built up. And you think about it, Las Vegas has always been an east-west oriented city, right? Dating back to the Union Pacific Railroad, where we exist because we were the place that had water between Salt Lake City and LA. On the railroad. That's why we're here. It's the only reason we're here, right? And then we built out things, right? And built from that. But we've never really been up to the north, down to the south facing city. The 11 allows us an opportunity to do that. And it allows us an opportunity for my world, for UNLV and ASU, which is a massively innovative campus doing incredible things to build up partnerships, right? Looking at how Phoenix has become also a tech town is something that we can learn from, that we can build alongside. They would love to have our tourism economy. We would love to have their tech economy. But maybe there's a way for us to be sort of suburbs of one another in the way that sometimes it feels like LA and Vegas are sort of becoming suburbs of one another.
So that's 4 of the 5 things. The 5th was a subway, isn't it?
Yeah.
You said that's coming too?
I mean, hopefully the boring,
our version of it is going to be Tesla
right?
tunnels.
Wouldn't that be amazing if, our entire lives, you and I have lacked public transportation that's affordable and fast and easy in the way that if you and I were kids who grew up in New York City, we'd know the subway like the back of our hand, right? We did not have that. We did not have anything like that as kids growing up in Las Vegas. Maybe, just maybe, we're on the cusp of getting that.
So for anyone who doesn't know this, there's a company called the Boring Company. It's an Elon Musk company. I've ridden in a Tesla from one part of the convention center down below ground up to another part of the convention center. I read in the paper that they opened it up to Resorts World, but I've not done that trip.
And Wynn as well now. When Wynn
is Wynn also open?
Yep. And the Westgate, I think, is upon us. So yeah, if that develops out, I mean, think about
is that an if, or is that as inevitable as the NBA?
Well, I think the if part is how far out it develops, right? So one of the ways that you and I are both, again, Las Vegas kids, the historic West Side is a sacred space, I would say, in Las Vegas because of the history there, right? And those of us who appreciate Las Vegas history appreciate it as such. Those of us who know the story of the West Side have a part of our heart dedicated to the West Side because we know that history. It's always been cut off, right, by the 15 and the 95 from the whole universe that is happening on the other side, right? You can almost throw a rock from Jackson, the famous hub of the West Side for many years, and hit the Circa. But you'd be throwing it over the 95 and the 15 freeway, right? What if the boring tunnels could go underneath all that and immediately link a community that's been historically cut off for horrific reasons, right? For devastating economic reasons and in ways that have always kept that community cut off from the prospering parts of the valley in a way that suddenly, in the same way that a kid from, New York could say, oh yeah, you take this train to this train to this train, right? Maybe a kid growing up on the West Side might say, oh yeah, you hop on, the underground tunnel, you take 4 stops and, all of a sudden you're at whatever, the Smith Center. Maybe that changes things, right? So things like that would be beautiful. I also, as a Boston guy, would love it. My friend Tyler Williams at the city of Las Vegas, who is a former Zapponian, now working in the city of Las Vegas in economic development, he had a brilliant idea where he talks about how if we could submerge the Spaghetti Bowl or submerge even the freeway as the 95 and build a park on top of it in the same way that Boston did with the Big Dig. Think about what that can do for these communities that are really, again, locked off from. I mean, if you have a car, of course, you can drive across it. But we haven't had the other forms of transportation, other modes of transportation to get us from point A to point B that other cities have had.
It's fascinating. Earlier, you mentioned Jan Jones.
Yeah.
And I told you, I sent out an email to previous guests, and Mike Forche said, hey, I talked to Jan Jones. She'd like to come on your podcast.
She'd be amazing.
What should I ask her?
Oh, ask her. She was my mayor when I was becoming cognizant of what Las Vegas was. Ask her how she helped Las Vegas become a grown-up city. Because all of a sudden, we had this very serious intellectual behemoth in the mayor's office that was Jan Jones Blackhurst, who was able to show us a path to a different future. She was Stanford educated, right? And it showed. Just brilliant, brilliant mind. And I always say that Jan was the mayor when we became a grown-up. She was the mayor when we became a global city. And no one else did that in the way that she did. And of course, the city of Las Vegas is a relatively small geographic space when compared to all of Clark County. But somehow from that perch, her voice was able to do that, even as she was focused on things like the Fremont Street experience, right, which changed the way that Fremont Street was lived. That is something that is attributable to her brain. She is a soul that we should build huge statues to. Carol Harder at UNLV is another person we should build huge statues to. We just named a building after her here. We need statues because she was the one who said in 2000, I want UNLV to be a UCLA, a massively sophisticated urban powerhouse university in the middle of a thriving city. And people laughed at her. People laughed at Jan Jones Blackhurst. People mocked Jan Jones Blackhurst. Jan was the first mayor of a substantially sized city to march in the gay pride parade at the front of the parade. She was somebody who talk about somebody who was born without an amygdala, right? She has no fear in a way that I admire. And the good fortune I've had to get to work with her a bit has been one of the great, moments of good fortune in my professional career.
I'm excited to talk to her.
Yeah, she's awesome.
All right. I'll give you the final takeaway. What's your favorite takeaway or the final thought you want to leave with the audience?
Oh gosh, I'm all tapped out. Again, I go back to be nice to people because you never know. My college baseball teammate was David Forst, who is now the general manager of the Oakland A's, now Sacramento A's, now soon to be Las Vegas A's. And he and I became friends back when he was struggling, trying to, he grew up in Southern California, and, the Harvard baseball team was struggling. It was freezing cold. It was his freshman year. He was injured. And he and I struck up a friendship. I had no way of knowing that he was going to become a character in the Moneyball book that was about to blow up the universe. I had no way of knowing he was someday going to be overseeing a team that would move to my hometown and make my town a Major League Baseball town. But man, his friendship has paid off in so many ways that friendships do over decades now. He's one of my favorite friends. And if you're nice to people, you just never know, right? Be kind because you never know, right? Don't be kind for cool. Don't be kind for benefit. Don't be kind for career ladder jumping. Be kind because you never know. You never know.
That's a great place to end. So fresh from Thailand, you agreed to sit down and do
Not
this.
so fresh,
thank you. No, I'm saying like you came back from.
Yeah, I came back from Thailand
last night. Here you are this morning.
I hope I was coherent.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was a lot of fun for me. I really appreciate you doing this. Thank you for listening. I would love to hear from you about your takeaways from this episode. Make sure to leave us a comment or leave us a review. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can hear future episodes as they come out. My name is Hayim Mizrahi. Tune in next time.